jump into tonight's chilling stories together. I'm 45 years old, a former psychology lecturer at the University of Michigan. My old job led me to spend years researching abnormal psychological behaviors. After taking early retirement, I kept the habit of lurking in online forums, places where I believed the human psyche's most clearly revealed. Last year, I started paying attention to an account named The Humble King on Reddit. Initially, what he wrote sounded harmless, even somewhat humble. But years of working with models of emotional manipulation made it impossible for me to look away from what he was sharing. He always started every conversation with lines like, "I know I'm nothing compared to you guys," or "I guess I'm not capable of doing that." I know I'm nothing compared to the talented people out there, but at least I know my limits. Maybe that's why I don't fail. But I noticed something was wrong. This wasn't genuine humility. This was a form of subtle manipulation. He was fishing for denial, waiting for someone to say, "No, you're really good." Every post followed the same pattern: fake self-deprecation, followed by waiting for community validation. A few weeks later, his tone changed. He began bragging about how he relieved stress, sending toxic comments to young entrepreneurs, up-and-coming artists, anyone pursuing a dream on social media. He justified that he was helping them, warning them early because new ventures always have major risks and will fail anyway. When someone objected, his defense collapsed. He suddenly admitted brazenly, "Yeah, I like pulling people down. I can't stand people who are confident for no reason." To prove he was different from the other users on the forum, he started boasting. He worked for a major company everyone envied, had a beautiful girlfriend, unlike those who only lived in the virtual world. A few other members, and I suspected he was lying, but no one had proof. Then one day, he left a final line before deleting his account. "I'm better than all of you." 2 months of silence passed. I had almost forgotten about him until a new account appeared. It wouldn't have been worth mentioning if the writing style hadn't been so familiar. He shared about real-life actions that made him feel superior, such as yelling at convenience store employees, causing scenes at restaurants, filing baseless complaints just to see them panic. He wrote that it felt amazing to see them tremble. They don't fight back. They apologize with their heads down. Just shout a few sentences, and you'll see them shaking like students in front of the chalkboard. It's truly cathartic. A few weeks later, local news in Michigan spread across the forum. A series of assaults targeting a group of high school girls had occurred. The perpetrator repeatedly physically assaulted, pushing, grabbing, pulling the girls, and then ran away, and all victims reported that he laughed loudly and yelled the same phrase, "I'm better than all of you." The community began to boil. His old posts were dug up, spreading across the forum at lightning speed. People compared his writing style, tone, and language, then matched them with the descriptions from the news report. The pieces were starting to fit together in a chilling way. I can't believe it. I followed him from his first posts. I even defended him when others called him negative. A few longtime users spoke up. They affirmed, "This is the humble king. Honestly, I used to laugh when he crushed someone's dreams with cold, hard data. I thought it was just brutal honesty. Now I realize I was cheering for a psychopath." Then someone said, "We need to call the police." When the police released the suspect's photo on the news, I felt that what I had imagined earlier was exactly accurate to a chilling degree. It was a skinny, small man, wearing thick glasses, with a pale face. The police confirmed he was unemployed and lived alone in a small apartment. No big company or girlfriend. Everything he had bragged about was a lie. I breathed a sigh of relief. Justice had been served. But the sentence stunned me. 6 months suspended. The reason was that the high school girls only suffered minor injuries, and he was deemed to have a psychological disorder that required treatment rather than incarceration. I read the news report over and over. 6 months suspended for behavior that was publicly foreshadowed by an escalation of violence online. That sentence was absurd. It was evidence of the system's failure to identify a threat from the online world. A year later, just as I was preparing to forget the whole story, another article appeared. This time it was no longer local news. It spread nationwide. A man had broken into a kindergarten in suburban Michigan, attacking teachers and parents, all women. A young female teacher died at the hospital due to head trauma. Security guards who subdued the attacker testified that he kept screaming, even while being held down on the floor. "I'm better than all of you." A few hours later on the Reddit forum, a mysterious new post appeared and vanished after just a few minutes. Content. "I'm better than all of you. I just did what everyone secretly thinks but doesn't dare to do. The world needs to be set right." I looked at the suspect's photo on the screen and immediately recognized him, the humble king. That skinny face, those eyes behind thick glasses, staring straight into the camera lens with defiance. After reflecting on all his actions, I can confirm he wasn't an online troll looking for attention. He was a narcissistic personality escalating his violence, from toxic comments to assault, and finally, murder. He didn't want recognition. He wanted fear. He wanted to prove he was superior to everyone. I turned off my computer and sat in silence. The thing that haunts me most isn't what he did, but the fact that, even though I saw the clear signs, I still couldn't prevent the tragedy from happening. I once called it emotional manipulation, suspected the bragging, and recognized the growing hatred. I read those words with the eye of a researcher, someone who had taught about abnormal behavior, and I was still just a person sitting in front of a screen, observing, analyzing, and then remaining silent. I was right about him, but it meant nothing without action. Now, every time I browse the forums, I no longer read casually. I look closer at every post. I ask myself, how many more, like the humble king, are still lurking in the crowd? How many warnings are missed? How many people are still watching without intervening? Listen, this is true, and I swear I can still smell it. It happened right in the old dilapidated apartment building I was designing in Chicago. The apartment had such thick walls that I could hear my neighbor's TV, their footsteps on the wooden floor, even their coughs. Apartment 3B next to me was occupied by a frail, skinny old man in his 70s who lived alone. I used to notice him getting his mail every morning. We weren't close, but I was used to his presence. In the middle of January last year, I suddenly realized I hadn't seen him for about a week. At first, I thought he might be visiting family or on vacation. But then, I started noticing unusual details. His mailbox was crammed with flyers and junk mail sticking out. The newspaper was still lying outside his door, the plastic wrapping soaked with rain, having been there for days. And most notably, apartment 3B was completely silent. I shared this with friends online. They told me to call the police immediately, but I hesitated. I convinced myself that everything was fine because I was afraid of being labeled a nuisance if he was simply out of town. That day, I decided to investigate a little. I stood outside the door of apartment 3B and rang the bell, but there was no response. I waited a moment and rang again. Still silence. I slowly pressed my ear against the door to listen, but heard no movement. I walked away, telling myself I had done my best. On the 10th day, everything changed. I opened my apartment door to leave for work and was assaulted by a horrible stench that filled the hallway. It wasn't the smell of garbage or spoiled food. It made me instantly nauseous. The odor was pungent, seemingly clinging to my clothes. I knew immediately the smell was coming from apartment 3B. I tried to convince myself that maybe he had left food in the fridge or that a small animal had died. But honestly, I couldn't help but shiver. I immediately went back inside and called 911. I explained to the operator my suspicion that something had happened to my neighbor. I hadn't seen him in over a week, and now there was a terrible smell coming from his apartment. The dispatcher told me to stay calm and that the police would be there shortly. I was completely frantic because the stench seemed to permeate everything, even me. About 10 minutes later, the police arrived with an ambulance. As soon as they stepped into the building, I saw them wince because of the odor. They knocked on the door of apartment 3B and called out loudly, but of course, there was no response. They spoke into their radios with someone, then decided to break down the door, as they had reason to believe the person inside was in danger. When the door burst open, the stench rushed out so powerfully that both police officers had to step back. One of them turned away, and I saw him throw up immediately. The other was calmer, pulled out a handkerchief to cover his nose and mouth, and stepped inside. I couldn't see clearly inside, but I heard him speaking into his radio, saying he had found a body and needed immediate assistance. He added that the body recovery would be extremely difficult. A few more police officers and medical examiners arrived. They entered apartment 3B with protective gear, masks, and gloves. I stood there trembling, not knowing what to do. One police officer approached me and asked a few questions about the old man. Things like when I last saw him, if he had any relatives, if anything seemed unusual. I answered each question mechanically and stammered, still dizzy. Then I instantly froze when I saw what would haunt me forever. From the crack under the door of apartment 3B, small white maggots began to crawl out quietly and slowly, as if death itself was seeping onto my doorstep. I was paralyzed. Shaking all over, I turned and ran back into my apartment, slamming the door shut. I gasped for air, then ran to the bathroom and vomited. A few minutes later, I heard movement outside. They were moving the body out. I just sat there listening to everything, my mind unable to stop conjuring up horrible images. After a few hours, everything quieted down. The police and ambulance were gone, but the stench remained. Though lessened, it was enough to remind me of what had happened. I looked at the wall separating my apartment from apartment 3B. I realized that for 10 days, only a thin wall away, a man had died in complete solitude. I suffered from insomnia for many nights afterward. Every time I closed my eyes, the image of the maggots crawling out from under the door appeared. Every time I smelled a strange odor, I felt sick as if it were coming from the corpse itself. I wanted to move out but didn't have the money. I truly felt helpless. Later, through the building manager, I learned the old man died of a stroke in the bathroom. He fell to the floor, and no one was there to help. He had no children or friends. No one realized he was gone. I tried to find peace by playing with my cat, but I knew that death had changed me. You see, this story isn't just about death, it's about isolation. A man died right next to me, separated by only a thin wall for 10 days without anyone knowing. And that is the most terrifying thing. The lonely death is real, and it happened right in the apartment next to mine.
My name's Owen. I'm 32 years old. I'm married for a year now. Me and my wife, we're residing in Long Island. We are living in a rather old house. According to our knowledge, we're the fourth owner of the estate. Existed for 30 years now. As all newlyweds, we're not rich, so both of us decided to pick up this estate, being the most affordable for us. The house is rather sturdy, even after many decades. The only catch was its rather old-fashioned design. Whoever built this lodging and owned it first must be someone rather wealthy. However, after 6 months residing here, there were strange things that occurred to us that defied all logical explanation. One evening, my wife and I were having our time watching movies in the living room. It was a rom-com, which was ruined at the climatic moment as I noticed something in the corner of my eyes, enough to startle me to a yelp. "What's going on?" My wife, also startled, asked me back. "There's a pale woman behind the TV, hon." She just laughed it off, saying that I'm seeing things, despite the fact that I've tried to describe that woman for her. Pale white figure, sunken eyes, but she wasn't buying it, telling me that I was hallucinating things that weren't there. Another time, I had to relieve myself in the middle of the night. When I was in front of the sink and watching myself in the mirror, she came to me again. She was right there behind my back, and this time, I was able to see her more clearly. Emaciated, pale, with sunken eyes. The sight was more than enough to send me running to a panic attack. The third time I saw her was when I was cleaning the floor. She was walking rather heavily, slowly toward the basement behind the main house. She was wearing a long dress, a type of which went out of fashion many years ago, singing along the way, with her haunting voice echoing along the hallways. She looked pregnant with swollen abdomen. This time my wife did consider what I told her, but she instead thought of me having psychological issues due to overworking. Why the heck am I the only person seeing things when my wife's immune to that shit? So I decided to purchase a more modern house in downtown area with a 20-year payment plan terms. I would go nuts staying here any longer. The house now I'll redecorate and put it for rent. To fasten the paces, I chose the hourly rate cleaning service. There were too many things to clean up here, so it took more than a day to complete. With cleaning up complete, we have finally decided on what to carry forward and what to discard. However, the two cleaning staffs said about a rather heavy metal chest in the basement that they would like to have me help in carrying it upstairs. I knew about this chest the day we moved in, but due to it being very heavy, we decided to leave it there for good. It took all four of us a lot of work to finally haul it out of the basement area. With things finally arranged, except for the heavy chest, we could finally rest. Tomorrow I'd deal with it. Likely it would need to be towed away. That was our final night here at the old house. However, weird things started to come up again. There's a lot of creepy sounds coming from the metal chest. First was the weeping of a woman. Then came loud bangs echoing from within the chest. Last but not least, the wailing of a child wheezing from within the accursed object. I could barely sleep while my wife's sleeping soundly that night. The next morning, having enough of it, I decided to open it up. My wife nagged at me for being unreasonable, but I couldn't stand it any longer. I felt an urge to open it up, to come to terms with all of my suffering. So I pried it open with all my strength. A nasty smell from within assaulted my sense of smell, gagged me up, forced me to vomit under such nauseating stench. My wife threw me a look of concern. For her, I was being unreasonable, and now was reaping the consequences. After calming myself down, I decided to look inside the chest, and immediately regret that decision. The first thing I saw was human feet, then arms, and finally, a human face. All was submerged within a fluid of something like paint. Now thinking back, I wished I did have a mental issue like my wife said. At least I could forget what I'd seen there. So I called the police, fighting the nausea the entire time. The police said it was the body of a woman. She was heavily pregnant at the 9th month by the time she was dead. Needless to say, we were in a state of shock and panic at the news. She was found shrunken to a fetal position, still clutching within the out-of-fashion long dress. The same one that I had seen her in the mirror with. After thorough examinations, they found the chest originated from an industrial factory only 12 miles away. However, the chest model was out of commission a decade ago already. Me and my wife, we also provided the information of the previous owner to the police. They quickly found the third and second owner after backtracking, tracing it up to the very first owner. The two previous owners claimed that the chest had always been there when they moved in. That thing, however, was so heavy that they all decided to just leave it there, and then it was forgotten. So the police searched for the first owner. His name's Thomas, the builder of this house, and also the owner of that previously mentioned factory. However, he'd passed away 3 years ago due to a heart attack. Thomas had a wife and a son who's almost 30 years old now. After mentioning about the body in the chest, they claimed no knowledge about that. Thomas divorced his wife when his son was only 4 years of age. She's been living away for all this time, only receiving alimony arrangement from her previous husband. Because it was related to Thomas, the body within was likely his mistress. So the police suggested a DNA test of the unborn child and Thomas's son. The match was solid at 25%. They were indeed half-siblings. The case, however, was only 50% completed. There's still a lot of questions going unanswered, like who's the killer and what's the motive for the killing. But the most haunting for me was when I was looking at Thomas's picture. He and I were uncannily familiar. So, I'm Tyler, and it's been like 6 months since everything happened. I fought like hell to make it back here. Even though I was physically okay, I was totally freaking out inside, and my heart felt ice cold. My girlfriend died right there during our picnic, and I saw her get murdered right next to me. My girl's name was Violet, and I was planning to pop the question. I'd kept it all on the down low, and everything was going perfect. One gorgeous weekend in November, Violet invited me out to Lake Berryessa to go camping. "Tyler, I'm so pumped. I want to see the gate to hell," Violet said. For anyone who doesn't know, the gate to hell is what locals call this massive whirlpool that shows up when the lake water gets high. This whirlpool was made by this cool overflow system that helps control all the extra water in the lake. We rolled up to the campsite with food that Violet made herself. "There's no one here but us, Tyler," Violet said, checking everything out with a big smile. I looked around too, and she was totally right. I joked, "I booked the whole place just for us," and we both cracked up. We ate and chatted, and I was about to finally do what I'd been thinking about for months. I dug into my pocket to grab the ring box, and my heart was racing so fast I could barely breathe. "Tyler," Violet called out, and I jumped, dropping the ring box. She reached out and grabbed my arm, looking confused as she stared behind me with wide eyes. "Violet, what's up?" I asked, turning around, and there was this tall guy wearing a black hoodie and sunglasses, so you couldn't see his face at all. He was holding some metal thing in his hand. Hey," I shouted, but he just ignored me. "Need any help?" I tried to sound friendly, but as he got closer, we saw that he was holding a knife. Violet was freaking out and holding my hand tight. "Call the police, Violet," I whispered while standing in front of her. But Violet looked totally frozen and didn't seem to hear me at all. We were kinda at his mercy, so it was probably best to just go along with what he said for now. I didn't want anything bad to happen. I figured this was just gonna be a regular robbery after handing over all the car keys, my wallet, and phone, but nope. "Tie up your boyfriend," that crazy man told Violet. At that moment, Violet was scared. Her face was pale, and she was shaking like crazy. Following the robber's orders, Violet tied my hands with my belt. Then, that bastard tied Violet up too. We were made to lie face down on the car hood, facing each other, and Violet just started crying. "Chill out. Everything's gonna be fine. I'm always gonna be right here with you, okay?" I tried to comfort her, but I was freaking out too. Violet bit her lip hard, trying to hold back her fear, and nodded. Those were the last words I got to say to Violet. She suddenly let out a scream of fear and pain as the first stab hit her hard in the back. The second, third, and fourth stabs came. Violet's screams got weaker, and all I could see were her eyes, filled with pain and despair, looking right at me. My heart stopped. I was breathing heavy, and my throat got all choked up. I couldn't say a word. A wave of horror hit me as I saw that awful scene, and my eyes filled with despair. I felt completely helpless. Pain and anger shot through my heart, and there was no way I could save the person I loved. I gripped the engagement ring box tight in my hand, like I was squeezing my own heart. That bastard stabbed Violet 10 times. He laughed and pointed at me. Just like Violet, he gave me 8 stabs and then casually walked away. I'd mustered up a little strength and tried to yell for help. A moment later, a dad and his kid who were fishing by the lake heard me and helped call the cops. My memory went blank right then. I woke up in the hospital to the gut-wrenching news that Violet had died from deep wounds and blood loss. The police asked me to give a detailed description of the killer. White guy, about 5 feet tall and around 170 pounds. Besides the black hoodie and sunglasses, he was dressed in all dark clothes. Oh, and there was this symbol on his shirt, a circle with a cross over it. That was all I could remember about the guy. According to the police, he was a serial killer, known as the Zodiac. Violet and I were the victims of his third case, but somehow I'd made it through. After that awful shock, my mind went totally blank. Every night I was haunted by Violet's last image. Her desperate eyes and bloody body kept showing up in my dreams, and even when I was awake, I felt like a total zombie. My heart was ice cold, and any shot at finding joy again felt completely hopeless. I couldn't shake the guilt of not being able to protect the girl I loved, and it felt like a mental wound that would never heal. The helplessness, bottled up anger, and pain of loss were crushing me, making me feel scared and empty, not knowing how to deal with reality after everything fell apart. The story is based on a true tale about the Zodiac Killer's third case. On September 27, 1969, 22-year-old Cecilia Shepard and 20-year-old Brian Hartnell were on a romantic camping trip at Lake Berryessa in Napa County, California. They went through the most painful and terrifying moments of their lives when they ran into Zodiac, the most mysterious killer ever. Even though the police found some more clues the killer left behind at the scene, they still couldn't figure out who he really was, even now.
I'm never working the night shift again. Not because of the low pay or the difficult customers. It's because I can never forget the sight of bright red blood dripping down a clown's painted face. And more importantly, I can't forget the feeling of betrayal when I found out who was behind that makeup. My name is Lucy. I've been working at McDonald's in Riverside, California for 2 years now. The job isn't bad, especially the night shift. There aren't many customers, and my boss is pretty chill with the night crew. Usually I just sit there, do a little cleaning, and wait for the time to pass. The night shift also pays more, so I really didn't have any complaints. That evening started like any other. I was on the night shift at the pickup window. Around 1 a.m., I started getting really sleepy. My head was nodding, eyes closing, when suddenly the customer chime went off. I jolted awake, looked out the window. A figure standing at the menu board made me jump. It was a clown, brightly colored suit, a pale white painted face with a big red smile. "Hello, I'd want a Whopper." The man's voice was hoarse, sounding a little unnatural. "I'm sorry, this is McDonald's, not Burger King, and according to company policy, you have to be in a vehicle to be served," I gently explained. The clown stood still for a moment. "Then I'll have a bacon eider." I frowned. That wasn't on the menu. In fact, I'd never heard of anything by that name. At this point, I figured this was a prankster. "Sir, you need to leave our property immediately." I firmly closed the pickup window. I tried to get back to work. About an hour later, I'd almost forgotten about the whole thing. I was getting ready to shut down the ice cream machine when I heard a noise. Turning around, I saw the clown standing outside the pickup window again. "I'd like a Big Mac and a Coke." His voice was clearer and more serious now. I hesitated, thinking maybe he was just a genuinely costumed customer, and the restaurant could be flexible for certain late-night cases like this. And this time, he'd ordered real items. "That'll be $8.50, I said. The clown handed me the cash. After preparing the order, I opened the pickup window to hand him the bag of food. The clown reached out, but instead of just taking the bag, he deliberately touched my hand and held it there for a very long time. "Excuse me, could I get some extra ketchup?" he said, still not letting go of my hand. I tried to pull my hand back, but he gripped it tighter. "I need ketchup," he repeated, then suddenly yanked my hand hard towards him. Before I could react, he yanked again, pulling my body forward. I screamed in a panic. With my free hand, I grabbed the barcode scanner and slammed it towards him. "Let go!" The scanner hit his forehead, and blood started to trickle down. The clown released my hand, stepped back, his hand touching the wound. Bright red drops of blood dripped onto his pale white face. He calmly offered a very wide smile. I slammed the pickup window shut, my heart pounding like it would burst from my chest. Trembling, I grabbed my phone to call the police, then tried to reach the store manager, but Mike didn't pick up. I called him repeatedly but couldn't get through. The police arrived after about 10 minutes. They checked the surrounding area but couldn't find the clown. They took a report and promised to increase patrols, then drove me home. The next morning, I arrived at the store early to report the incident to Mike. He was sitting in his office, looking tired. Mike listened, occasionally nodding, but I felt he wasn't really paying attention. It was probably just someone trying to mess with you. Kids like to pull stunts like that. You shouldn't worry about it too much. Mike looked up. I noticed a long cut on his forehead. The cut was deep, and there was dried blood around it. My heart started to pound. "How did you get that injury?" Mike raised his hand to his forehead, hesitated, and avoided my gaze as he tried to explain. I clearly remembered the wound on the clown's forehead. Mike's wound was in the exact same spot, the same shape. I looked him in the eyes. "Why did you do it?" Mike stopped smiling. "What are you talking about?" But I already knew the answer. The manager I had always trusted, like an older brother, was the very person who had terrorized me. I quit my job immediately and left. In the weeks that followed, I often woke up in the middle of the night, dreaming of the clown standing by my bedroom window. But the scariest thing wasn't the clown. It was the realization that the people you trust can become your enemy overnight. The real fear doesn't come from strangers, but from those closest to you. I moved to San Diego and started working at a grocery store, and I swore I would never work a night shift again. The music was ear-splitting. My body started moving on its own, joining the packed dance floor. I'm Hal, 26, and that day was supposed to be special. We were at some brand new club in downtown Columbus. Mike had picked the place, supposedly a premium music experience, in a uniquely designed venue. Even Alex, who usually hated crowded spots, came along just for me. The club was huge, but something about it made my skin crawl. Maybe it was the dim hallways or weird little corners in the old building, a factory back in the 1950s. Or maybe it was how the lights kept flickering, plunging the place into brief darkness every few seconds. And then suddenly, it went completely black. The music cut off. Pitch black darkness swallowed everything. At first, people laughed nervously or murmured in confusion. A few folks flipped on their phone flashlights, casting eerie spots in the gloom. I realized I was gripping Alex's shoulder. Mike was nowhere to be seen. The air grew thick, heavy, suffocating. 10 minutes dragged by. Still no power. An uneasy feeling crept over me. And then I heard it. A soft sob. It started faint, easy to mistake for background noise. But it got clearer, louder, raw, and desperate. My grip tightened on Alex's shoulder, but before I could whisper my anxiety, a piercing scream split the air. My whole body jolted, goosebumps everywhere, heart hammering like it might explode out of my chest. Weirdly enough, no one else around me seemed to hear it. The flashlight on my phone still cut through the darkness. I stood frozen, straining to separate that scream from the rest of the noise. I grabbed Alex and pulled him toward the sound. Around us, the crowd was getting restless from the blackout. People were shouting, others desperately searching for exits. In the chaos, Alex slipped from my grip. I shouted his name, but it was useless. Another scream pierced the air, louder this time and closer. It came from one of those shadowy hallways I'd noticed earlier. I moved toward it, my phone's flashlight beam guiding my way. The corridor was narrow and endless, lined with closed doors. The air turned colder, like I'd stepped into another dimension entirely. No one else was down here. This place probably wasn't meant for visitors. At the far end, a door stood slightly open, dim light spilling through the gap. My pace slowed, my heart thudding so loud I could hear it pounding in my ears. As I got closer, a pungent, fishy odor filled my nostrils. Curiosity, or maybe reckless stupidity, pushed me onward. My hands shook as I nudged the door open. Inside was a cramped storage room. In the corner, someone knelt with their back to me. In front of them lay a motionless body, blood pooling darkly on the floor. I just stood there, frozen. Slowly the man turned around, and I recognized Mike's face immediately. But his eyes, they were hollow, wild, and he had a knife in his hand, dripping bright red. It all happened fast, like some twisted nightmare. Mike rose slowly, staring right at me, and started walking toward me, knife still clutched tight, leaving red droplets trailing behind him. I wanted to run. I wanted to scream. But my body refused to move. My feet felt like they were nailed to the damn floor. Suddenly, a flashlight beam sliced through the darkness from behind me, and Alex's familiar voice echoed down the hallway. Mike stopped in his tracks. His eyes cleared slowly, like he was snapping out of a trance. He stared at the knife in his hand, then down at the motionless figure on the floor, and a look of absolute horror spread across his face. He dropped to his knees, letting the knife fall to the ground with a clatter, and started mumbling incoherently. As I cautiously stepped closer, I finally made out what he kept repeating. It told me to do it. It told me to do it. Suddenly, the lights surged back on, blinding us. Music boomed again from the main dance area, and the cheers and laughter outside felt disturbingly out of place compared to the horror unfolding in front of me. In that moment, I finally recognized the man lying on the ground, James Morrow. He'd been all over the news recently, especially because of Mike's family. 2 years ago, James had raped and murdered Mike's sister, but walked free due to a lack of evidence. Mike had been secretly tracking him ever since, and now, by some sick twist of fate, they'd both ended up at this club, on my birthday of all nights. I stood there, numb, watching my best friend kneeling next to the man who had destroyed his life. The screams still rang inside my head. I couldn't even tell if they were James's, Mike's, or just echoes in my own mind. Distant sirens pierced the night, growing louder. All I could do was watch helplessly as Mike, panicked and trembling, was led away, and Alex stared back at me, eyes wide with shock. My 26th birthday had become a nightmare I'd never forget. It's been a few years, but I still can't forget what I saw on the security camera that morning. The image of the back door of the gas station slowly opening, but no one walking out. I'm Megan, 32 years old. I work the morning shift at an old gas station in a small town in Montana. It's pretty remote, with just a few gas pumps, a small convenience store, and a gravel parking lot in the back. I would arrive at 6 a.m. to take over for the night shift employee, a woman named Dora. The stillness of this place, especially before the sun was fully up, always made me feel a little uneasy. It was a morning in autumn. I arrived at the gas station about 10 minutes earlier than usual. When I walked into the convenience store, a middle-aged man was standing at the counter, his hands in his pockets, looking a little grumpy. The counter was empty. I guess this customer had been waiting for a while and was getting annoyed. "Dora?" I called out loudly, but there was no answer. I quickly apologized to the man and checked him out. After the man left, I looked around the store. The counter was as neat as usual, the cash register was locked, and the shelves were not disturbed. I went to the back stockroom and called out a few more times. I checked the bathroom, but there was no sign of Dora. On the break room table, I saw her phone. I wondered if she had an emergency and left without having time to let me know. I ran outside and looked at the parking lot. Dora's car was still parked near the back. A feeling of confusion started to rise in me. Dora always followed work procedures. No matter what, she would always inform me and the boss about the situation. I called my boss and briefly told him everything. My boss told me to check the security camera and call the police if necessary. I opened the computer at the counter and logged into the CCTV system. The station had 3 cameras, one at the counter, one at the gas pumps, and one in the back parking lot. My hands trembled a little as I rewound the footage from 4 a.m. when Dora was still at the counter. The video began with Dora standing behind the counter, occasionally glancing at the clock on the wall. She looked normal, maybe just a little tired from the long night shift. Then suddenly, she looked up, her eyes directed toward the back door, as if she had just heard something. After a few seconds of listening, Dora quickly stepped away from the counter and went straight toward the back door. I immediately switched to the parking lot camera, not understanding why I felt so tense. The screen showed the door slowly opening, the hinges creaking softly, but there was no Dora, no one there at all. I rewound it in slow motion, my eyes glued to the screen, watching every second. The door opened, the air seemed to stand still, then the door closed. I still didn't see her. "No way! What is this?" I mumbled to myself. I checked the time again, making sure the 2 cameras were perfectly synchronized. The camera wasn't broken. Everything else on the screen looked completely normal. Dora's car, the trash can behind the store. But Dora seemed to have vanished into the darkness. A feeling of fear washed over me, making my hands and feet go cold. I tried to find a logical explanation. Maybe she had stayed close to the wall, avoiding the camera's angle, and then ran straight into the pine forest behind. But why would she do that? Did someone call her out? Or was someone waiting, threatening her? These thoughts made me shiver and look around the store. Suddenly I felt scared of this familiar place. I called the police. While waiting, I went out to the parking lot and stood right at the back door, observing everything. The ground was covered with gravel and dry leaves. The dense pine forest was about 50 yards away. I imagined Dora running in there. But for what reason? Where did she go? The police arrived. They thoroughly checked the store, the parking lot, and rewatched the video. An officer took careful notes and asked me about Dora. I told him what I knew. Dora was 28, lived alone in a small apartment near downtown Livingston, and had been working the night shift for 2 years. The officer asked if Dora had any enemies, or if there was anyone suspicious in the area. I was stunned for a few seconds. I said I didn't know. Dora and I weren't close enough to know too much about each other. The police checked Dora's car. The door was unlocked, and the keys were still in the ignition. A cup of cold coffee was on the passenger seat, next to a neatly folded sweater. There were no signs of a struggle or an attack. The police called a search team, but the forest was too vast, and the autumn wind had caused a thick layer of fallen leaves, covering any possible traces. Dora's apartment was also searched, but there was nothing unusual. No clues were found. In the following weeks, the story of Dora's disappearance spread throughout the town. The local newspaper published a short article asking for information from the public. A few people said they had seen Dora, but the information they provided was not helpful. 3 years have passed, and Dora is still missing without a trace. I still work at the gas station, but every time I open the back door to take out the trash, I always feel a strange cold draft. I don't believe in ghosts or the supernatural, but I can't understand how Dora disappeared. Was she afraid of something in the forest? Or was someone really waiting in the darkness where the camera couldn't record? I always want to believe that Dora simply quit her job and is living peacefully somewhere far away. But then, every time the back door creaks open in the wind, I find myself involuntarily turning my head, half hoping, half afraid, that Dora will walk in.
I'm Colleen, 35 years old. I live alone and am still focusing on developing my career. My neighbor is Christy. She's a single mother with a 6-year-old son named Aiden. Christy moved into this neighborhood when she was still carrying Aiden. We got to know each other and quickly became close. Christy has a beautiful face, blonde hair, but her eyes always carry a deep sadness. I haven't heard her mention her parents, nor has any family come to visit Christy since she moved in. Christy's life was quite difficult with her job at the nearby Kroger supermarket while heavily pregnant. When it was time to give birth to Aiden, the two of them lived off government assistance. But I think that wasn't the hardest thing for a single mother like Christy. I often saw a man with a rather fierce appearance visiting the home of her and her son. Every time he comes, it won't be long before there will be arguments and curses between the two of them. Many times, Christy appeared with injuries on her body. I told Christy about my suggestion to call the police to protect mother and daughter, but she had a rather harsh reaction. "I'm so grateful, but this is my personal matter." Christy endured a lot, raising her children and trying to study more to find a stable job. Currently, the life of the mother and child has become much more stable, and the man rarely appears now. Aiden is a smart and understanding boy, with a face that looks exactly like that man's. "Good morning, Aunt Colleen." That adorable source of energy always makes others feel warm and touched. One evening, it was already late, and I was sitting on the living room sofa, finishing some work when I heard a knock on the door. "Aunt Colleen!" Aiden's voice sounded strained. I quickly ran to open the door, and the boy hugged me tightly, crying uncontrollably. "What's wrong, Aiden?" I asked anxiously. And when I heard the arguing and the sound of an unfamiliar car in front of Christy's house, I understood. I led Aiden into the house and poured him a cup of warm milk. After drinking the milk, Aiden lay his head on my lap and fell into a deep sleep. I gently patted Aiden to help him sleep peacefully and waited, knowing that Christy would come to pick him up. Around midnight, the sound of an engine revving and speeding away echoed loudly. Not long after, Christy knocked on my door urgently and called out loudly. I carried the deeply sleeping Aiden and walked over to open the door. Christy, with a bruised body, her mouth still bleeding and her eyes swollen, avoided making eye contact with me. "Let me help you clean your wounds," I offered. "No need, thank you so much," she said as she picked up Aiden and quickly turned to leave. I truly felt heartbroken seeing the two of them like that, but there was nothing I could do, as I had no right to interfere in their lives. The next day, Following my schedule for a 3-day business trip, I left the house early. I left a note and some candy in case Aiden came looking for me and couldn't find me. When I returned, I was quite surprised to see that the note and candy were still untouched. After putting away my things, I took the gifts I had bought for Christy and Aiden and went over to their house. Christy! Colleen, you're back? Are you going somewhere? I asked curiously as I saw Christy loading a suitcase into the trunk of the car. Oh, right. I'm going on a trip for a few days. By yourself? Where's Aiden? I looked around searching for that adorable figure. He's sleeping in the car. I bought a little gift from my business trip for you and Aiden. Thank you so much. Christy suddenly became emotional and walked over to hug me. She said her goodbyes and began her trip. I watched as their car disappeared from sight until it was out of view. The following days were quite boring without little Aiden around. It's been a week. Christy and her child still haven't returned. Their trip must be quite long. That's fair. They deserve to relax and enjoy themselves after those exhausting days. One evening, while I was having dinner, there was a knock on the door. I immediately thought of Aiden, assuming he had returned, so I hurried to open the door. It was the police. I was a bit surprised and somewhat disappointed. They said they were investigating a case and asked for my cooperation. Do you know anything about them? Christy and Aiden? They're longtime neighbors of mine. They're currently on a long trip. Is this the car? The police asked, showing a picture of Christy's car, and I quickly confirmed it. How about this suitcase? I'm not sure. She went on a trip, so she definitely had a suitcase, but I can't remember the exact style or color. Inside the suitcase was the body of a 6-year-old boy, found when it was placed in the trunk of the car and abandoned in the forest. At the moment, we have not yet found the woman named Christy. The police announcement left me stunned. So, the day I saw her loading the suitcase into the trunk, I was shocked that my body froze. The police conducted a search of Christy's house that very night. There were no signs of a struggle, and no poison or drugs were found. The house was very neat and orderly. Many days and months passed, and the police search for Christy's whereabouts continued. The news spread throughout the state and even made national headlines. There were a few reports claiming to have seen Christy, but after further investigation, it turned out to be people who only resembled her. I requested permission to organize a funeral for Aiden, the lovely and warm-hearted boy. I don't know why, who the culprit is, or whether Christy is alive or has already passed away. I hope that in this world or another universe, the two of them will always find the happiness they truly deserve, far from any pain and misfortune.
My name is David. I'm 32 years old and work as a mechanic at a small garage in Arizona. After my divorce from Kate last March, I only get to see my son, Bobby, on weekends. He's 6 now and absolutely loves hamburgers, so nearly every weekend, I take him to Burger King. It's become our little ritual, something familiar and comforting every time we're together. That day was just like any other. I picked Bobby up at 9 a.m. After a quick stop at the bookstore, we headed to Burger King around 11. Bobby hopped out of the car and ran excitedly toward the big glass doors. I followed, smiling at his joy. "Dad, look!" Bobby suddenly shouted. I looked in the direction he pointed. Standing near the entrance was a Burger King mascot, waving cheerfully at us. Bobby waved back, grinning. We went inside, ordered food, and sat at a table by the window. Bobby chatted about school, laughing and talking a mile a minute. I savored every second with him. When we left, the mascot was still there. Bobby paused to touch the costume, grinning. The next weekend, we came again, but left around 3 p.m. In the rearview mirror, I saw the Burger King mascot step out from the shadows on the side of the building. It wouldn't have been that strange, except he was holding a wrench. He began walking toward us, slow, steady. Something felt wrong. I grabbed Bobby's hand and rushed him toward the car. Best not to provoke him. We made it inside, but the moment the doors closed, the man lunged forward. He slammed the wrench into the passenger side mirror, shattering it completely. The sound of glass breaking made Bobby scream. I hit the gas and sped onto the road. In the rearview mirror, I could still see the mascot standing in the parking lot, wrench in hand, motionless. When we got home, I called the Burger King manager. They told me no one had been scheduled to wear the mascot suit that day. I filed a police report, but they said they needed more solid evidence. I began to suspect maybe he was a drug addict, hallucinating. Either way, he was dangerous. Over the next few weeks, I decided to take Bobby to another Burger King. We gradually forgot about the bizarre incident. A few weeks later, on a hot summer afternoon, Bobby came to stay with me. We were cooking dinner, laughing, having fun. Later that night, while watching TV, the power suddenly went out. "Stay here, buddy. I'll grab the flashlight." I headed to the kitchen, opened the drawer, and started searching. Probably just a blackout in the neighborhood. Then I heard Bobby's voice from the living room. "Dad, there's someone outside the door." Flashlight in hand, I ran back. Bobby was standing by the window. "It's the big burger guy," he gasped. My heart dropped. I aimed the flashlight outside through the glass, but it was pitch dark. I saw nothing. Then I turned toward the front door and realized it was unlocked. I had forgotten to lock it when we came home. The hinges creaked. Someone was slowly pushing the door open. "Bobby, go to my bedroom. Lock the door." Bobby ran into the room. The front door was completely open. A dark figure walked in, wearing a Burger King mascot costume. The stench spread, and he still had the wrench in his hand. The mascot stood still at the door for a few seconds, as if observing. I held the flashlight tightly. My other hand fumbled for my phone in my pocket and dialed the police as quickly as possible. "What do you want?" The person didn't answer. He walked slowly toward me. I backed into the kitchen looking for the knife. He chased after me, raising the wrench high. I dodged, and the wrench hit the kitchen cabinet. I grabbed the meat cleaver and turned to face him. He rushed forward, and I stabbed the knife toward the giant burger head. The knife was stuck in his shoulder, but he still hadn't fallen. He swung the wrench, hitting my shoulder. I screamed, stopping for a few seconds. He took the opportunity to continue swinging the wrench twice more, hitting my back and chest. "Dad!" Bobby cried loudly. The boy stood at the door and witnessed everything. Taking advantage of that moment, I jumped up and pushed the intruder down. The giant burger head flew out, and long brown hair fell down. It was Kate, my ex-wife. She was lying on the floor, her eyes bloodshot, her face pale. Her long hair was sticky with sweat. "Why did you do that?" Sarah gasped, looking at me with a strange look. "Do you think you can take my child?" "Bobby will be afraid of you. He just wants to be with me." I stood there, stunned. So Kate was behind all this horror. A few minutes later, the police arrived. They handcuffed Kate and put her in the car. I hugged Bobby, who couldn't stop crying. From inside the police car, Kate looked at us with hateful eyes. The next day, the lawyer said that Kate had been severely depressed since the divorce. She rented a mascot costume and followed us for months. The goal was to make Bobby afraid to be with me. Kate will be receiving psychological treatment in the near future. Then we will go to court to renegotiate custody. Bobby doesn't want to go to Burger King anymore. He often asks about his mother, but I don't know how to explain everything to him. All I can do is hold him close and whisper, "Everything will be okay, son." I still see those faces every night, a family of 4. Their pictures in the newspaper smiling happily, unaware that that dinner would be their last. I could have saved them, but I didn't. I'm Cal. I was 20 years old at the time. I worked the night shift at a Dollar Tree in Yakima, Washington. The store was on Nob Hill Boulevard, a pretty empty area after 9 p.m. It was an incredibly difficult time for my family. My mom had just been diagnosed with lung cancer. The hospital bills were piling up. The job at Dollar Tree paid $9 an hour, which wasn't much, but I had no other options. I worked the night shift. My job was to stock shelves from 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. Deb was my manager. She was middle-aged and pretty skinny. Deb had a habit of biting her nails until they bled. I figured it was from work stress. After a month of working there, I noticed something strange. Twice a week around 2 a.m., a white truck with no company logo would park at the back door. Deb always handled these deliveries by herself. She would tell me to keep working in the front of the store. I asked about the strange deliveries. Deb snapped, "It's just extra stock. The company sends it whenever it's ready." But the boxes had no labels. I didn't question it anymore. My night job and family situation kept me busy enough. One day, I was leaving after my shift when I realized I had left my phone in the stockroom. When I went back, the stockroom door was ajar. Through the crack, I saw Deb working under a dim light. On the table were dozens of packages of deli meat. She was carefully peeling off the old labels, spraying some kind of liquid on each package. Finally, she would carefully wrap them and put on new labels. I was frozen, trying to squint to see what the liquid was. My hand unconsciously touched the door, pushing it wide open. Deb immediately looked up. Our eyes met. "Cal, get in here." Her voice was strangely calm. I walked in. Deb told me to sit down across from her. She continued to label a few more packages before turning to me. "Your mom is seriously sick, right? Hospital bills aren't cheap." I was silent. "I'll give you an extra $500 in cash every week. You just have to forget what you saw tonight. What you're doing is illegal. That chemical could be deadly. Everyone dies in different ways. But if your mom doesn't have money for treatment, she could die right now," Deb said, her voice rising to drown out my objections. She leaned forward. "I have 2 daughters to raise. My husband left last year. What other choice do you think I have?" I looked at the meat packages on the table. A few of them had turned a grayish green, but after she sprayed the liquid, they looked fresh again. I thought about my mom lying in her hospital bed, needing expensive medicine. I clenched my fists, looking down. "I need to think about it. You have until your next shift to decide. If you tell anyone..." She didn't finish the sentence, but the look in her eyes made her threat clear. I went home and couldn't sleep. $500 a week could solve a lot of my problems. I convinced myself that it probably wasn't serious enough for anyone to be in danger from eating the meat. At my next shift, I accepted Deb's deal, but a part of me was torn. I started to secretly take pictures whenever Deb was working in the stockroom. I wrote down the dates and times the truck arrived. I kept one of the relabeled meat packages in my freezer at home as evidence. I told myself that one day, when my mom was better, I would report everything with this evidence. A month went by. I was getting paid regularly, and my financial situation and my mom's health were both improving. One day, while watching the afternoon news, I saw a reporter standing in front of a hospital, reporting on a series of food poisoning cases. As of now, 12 people have died. Among them is a family of 4. My heart stopped when I heard the next sentence. The investigation revealed that all of them had eaten a type of deli meat sold at Dollar Tree. I immediately realized it was the meat I had helped Deb put on the shelves. I rushed to the Dollar Tree. The parking lot was filled with police cars and health inspectors' vehicles. Yellow tape was everywhere. I parked far away, watching from my car. An inspector in a white suit walked out of the back door, carrying a plastic bag with a meat sample. I called Deb, but her number was no longer in service. I decided to drive to her house, but when I got there, her neighbors said Deb had moved out the night before. I clenched the steering wheel, filled with anger and helplessness. I drove back to the Dollar Tree and sat silently in my car. I should have been more firm, stuck to my original thoughts. Then maybe I wouldn't be tormenting myself like this now. After a few hours of internal struggle, I decided to talk to the police. But just as I opened the car door, my phone buzzed. A text message from an anonymous number appeared. It was a single picture of me standing in the stockroom, taking money from Deb. I looked around the parking lot, then jumped back into my car and drove straight home. That night, I packed my things and convinced my mom to move to Scranton to live with my aunt, telling her I had found a new job there. We moved the next morning, but the fear still haunts me. I followed the investigation every day and learned that Deb still hadn't been found. My mom and I moved a second time. I changed my phone number 3 times. I deleted all my social media accounts, but I still can't feel at peace. Last month, while walking down the street, I froze when I saw a skinny woman standing on a street corner. She was wearing sunglasses and was covered up, but the way she bit her nails was exactly like Deb. I only looked away for a few seconds, and when I looked back, she was gone. My mom passed away last March. The cancer had spread too quickly, and there was nothing we could do. In her final moments, she held my hand and whispered weakly, "I know you did your best." I broke down in tears because I had hidden everything from her until the very end.